the purpose of the seminar is to talk about concepts and strategies that I think are good for any type of business, but especially legal services or any professional service. The legal market, I think, is changing every day, and it's becoming more and more competitive every day because of technology and the internet. And I think that attorneys who aren't recognizing this are going to find that practicing law is getting to a point where you have to constantly remind your clients and your prospective clients that you're there. And through these strategies, I think that these are ways that you can do that. So a lot of what I'll talk about today isn't really earth-shattering. You may have heard it before in magazines that you've read, perhaps books, other seminars. But I think it's 5 strategies that are very simple and effective to implement into your practices, whether or not it's a large firm or a small firm. My practice is criminal defense. I am a sole practitioner. I have a small staff. But I think that a lot of the strategies that I'll speak about today apply to larger firms as well. Maybe not in the same type of methods, but in the terms of reaching out to clients and reminding them of your firm. Criminal defense, obviously, I'm in court a lot. Some of you may be practicing criminal defense. Some of you may not be practicing criminal defense. But I think whether or not you're in civil or criminal, these strategies will help you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing as we go along. But so what I just said, the practice of law is changing. And again, attorneys have to recognize that it's a business. And especially attorneys who maybe don't collect a salary every 2 weeks, you have to recognize that you have to keep your pipeline filled with cases. And the way to do that isn't simply saying that I want to take out more advertising, I want to spend more on simply putting out ads in local papers or attending more networking events. These things can help, but the bottom line is that you have to develop a systematic approach. And the 5 strategies that I'm going to speak about today are focused on all that. Now, during law school, a lot of us, whether you're in law school 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, if you recall, most of the lectures, practically none of the lectures, spoke about the practice of law as a business. If you recall, it was theory. A lot of it was whether it was the Fourth Amendment, the First Amendment, political and civil rights, whatever course you were taking, you spoke about the area of law, and that was pretty much it. There was no talk about branding your services. And in fact, I think if you mentioned it, the professors would look at you like, maybe you should go get an MBA, or maybe you should go to business school. Perhaps you're in the wrong place. And I don't say that to take issue with the way law school was taught. I think that the way law school was taught, for the most part, is the correct way. It educates young men and women on how to become attorneys. And the knowledge that you learn there, I think, is very important. But I think that law schools should teach a little bit about how to brand and market yourself to some extent. I think it's important. I think to ignore it is simply bad for the practice of law, because I think it leaves people guessing as far as who the attorney is who can best suit their needs. And I think that marketing is a good business strategy, but it's also your ethical responsibility as an attorney. I think it's important that clients should know that you can satisfy their problems. And I think that simply being a good lawyer isn't enough anymore. I think the strategy used to be that if I'm a good lawyer, people will come find me. And to some extent, I firmly believe that the internet is changing that, because what you're finding now is, especially with the younger population, is that people are searching online for attorneys. People are going beyond simply word of mouth. And I think word of mouth, if you rely on it, it's simply not enough. It's not going to get you to a point where your practice is operating in a systematic approach. What I just said. Traditionally, lawyers were expected to simply be good practitioners, and the cases would follow. And you may even fall into this category. Many attorneys believe, and may still believe, that the solution is just time. If I just wait, eventually the cases will come. I just have to wait my turn, and eventually I'm going to be the guy or the gal who's going to be the go-to person. And I think, especially now, with technology, with marketing, with branding, with the growth of online systems, client reviews, I think more and more you have to tell people why you're the best, why you're a good attorney, why they should hire you. And one of the themes that I'll speak about today isn't so much selling. This isn't a seminar where we're trying to sell our services. In fact, I hate the word selling when it comes to legal practices. I don't want to be in the position where I'm trying to sell myself. I want to be in a position where I'm educating my clients and my prospective clients about the law. And I want them to see me as the expert in the field that they're looking to hire. Selling your services, being the salesman trying to close your client, I think it's a bad spot for attorneys. If you're trying to get a client in a room like this and say, I'm going to close them today, I think that's not where you want to be as attorneys. In fact, I think if you're there, what happens is ultimately you begin competing on things like price. And again, I think it's a poor position. My goal as an attorney is never to compete on price. In fact, I tell clients during my consultation, I don't even mention price. I don't want price to be a concern. Obviously, people are going to ask about the price of services and billable hours and things like that. But the point is that price wants to be the secondary discussion. You want to focus on why they should hire you and see the value in your services. Growing your business is again an ethical obligation. It's not enough to simply say that I'm going to be a good lawyer and the cases will come in. And if you simply ignore that part of your practice and simply work on your cases, there's a phrase that an attorney used once. It actually wasn't a lawyer. It was a business consultant, Michael Gerber. He wrote a book called The E-Myth. And in The E-Myth, he says, are you working on your business or in your business? And you have to do both, in my opinion. You have to work on your business, meaning that you have to work to grow your business every day, whether you are a lawyer, a doctor, a CPA, and you have to work in your business. Working on your business, to me, is equally as important. If you simply go to your office every day and just work on your files and leave at 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whenever it is, you will quickly find that the work is going to dry up. And perhaps the client who was feeding you work this week or last month perhaps doesn't need you any longer, or perhaps has moved on for whatever reason. He moved, his business closed, or whatever happened has changed that source of income for you. And if your pipeline is empty, well, then you're left with, again, just simply hoping that cases come in. And if you're in a position where you have expenses, whether they are large firm expenses or small firm expenses, you have overhead. Even at a small practice, as many of you may know, expenses can be substantial. Rent, secretaries, printing, all these things come into a factor when you have your own practice. And even if you're at a larger firm, again, costs are important. And if you're simply spending and you're not bringing anything in, well, quickly you become this expendable commodity because people see you as simply as a person who's coming to the well and just taking out but never putting in. Talk about competing on price. Competing on price is a strategy. I'm not going to say it's not a strategy, but I think attorneys who compete on price are in a bad position. If you're trying to compete on price, quickly you will find that it's the easiest thing to change. If a person comes to my firm and looks at me and says, okay, well, Gambone gave me this price, and now I'll go to Johnson, and I'm going to hire Johnson because Johnson was, a few $1,000s less. To me, that's a bad spot to be in because that client wasn't sold on me as an attorney. That client was simply looking at the price of my services as compared to Johnson, and really he thought that Johnson and I were pretty much the same. And it's obviously that was my issue because I failed to educate that client or that prospective client on why our services were superior to Mr. Johnson's or Mr. Jones's. talk about sharing cost. And this slide, a lot of people have an issue with it, but I think that effectively practicing law and trying to grow your practice doesn't mean sharing cost. I think a lot of people will talk about how do we share cost? How do we cut our expenses? How do we have less and then grow our business? And the reality is that your focus can't be on sharing cost. I'm not saying it's not important to try to limit your expenses, but what I am saying is that you have to focus on growing your business. Simply looking for ways to cut cost isn't really a growth strategy. It's more or less a way of maintaining what you have. And if you're trying to grow your practice, simply saying, well, if I have another office mate, if I bring this person in, if I get rid of this, and if you're simply focusing on that, well, then your practice really is never going to grow, and frankly, it's going to get smaller as the years go on, because what's going to happen is ultimately there's going to be more lawyers, we're all going to age, and we're all going to get a little tired, and the point is that you have to focus on what you're going to do to bring more work into your office, rather than saying, well, if I cut this expense, or if I bring this person in to cut that, it'll make things better. And it won't, because eventually the issue about bringing work will still be there. Again, I talk about a growth strategy versus a survival mindset. To me, a growth strategy is I'm not so much focused on expenses. I understand that they're an issue, but I'm also focused on what can I do to grow my office? What can I do to grow my practice? What am I doing? Am I marketing my service in such a way that people see me as a resource and as a source of influence? Attorneys in a survival mindset. What you do is you're working in your business and you're not on your business. So you're not collecting information, you're not maintaining marketing lists, you're simply relying on the belief that people will remember you because of some meeting. And again, we all go to events. We all go to networking events. We all see people on our daily business, but people forget names. And to be very honest, most of us know probably 4 or 5 attorneys who practice in the area that we practice in. So why should you hire me versus another criminal defense lawyer? And the issue is, well, you may know me, we may have a personal relationship, but at the end of the day, that attorney or that other source of influence may have that same relationship with an attorney, and it may be a toss-up. So at the end of the day, whether or not you get that business, a lot of it depends on what you've done to maintain that relationship. And I believe that maintaining that relationship is more than just sending a holiday card, which probably a lot of us are getting this week, or sending the occasional phone call or the email, say, hey, how's it going? To me, it's the constant marketing of your services in such a way that people don't see you as the salesman, but as the educator, to say that this law firm is really on it in terms of maintaining their competency and their expertise in an area of law, rather than this law firm has the ad that we're aggressive and that we're great attorneys. Because most attorneys' advertisements all say the same thing, right? They all say that we're aggressive, we're the best. In some way, shape, or form, we're all saying the same thing. We're all saying that we're litigators, we go to court, we win cases. And if you notice, a lot of times the only thing we hear is that we win cases. It's never that we lose a case. In fact, I've made it a practice now in my own firm that when we lose a case, we talk about it. I actually put it out there that we lose cases, because I think it's important to tell people that because number one, it humanizes you, and people see that it isn't always roses, and you can actually learn something from losing a case, and you can actually educate clients on losing a case. The fact that you lost a case isn't, obviously, from a business standpoint, you don't want to lose cases on a continuous basis. But the point is that clients want to know, well, he lost this case, what happened? And if they're going to your website, if they're reading about your firm, to me, they're learning about your firm. And during the course of that knowledge, they're becoming acquainted with you as people and as lawyers. And if they have a problem, ultimately, they're going to have to hire somebody. And I think if you maintain that relationship, you are on a short list very quickly. And again, if you're in the survival mindset, I think that you are an attorney who has to rely on other attorneys creating work for you. And I think firms, whether you're at a small firm or a large firm, eventually a firm will see you as expendable. Because really, what's going to happen is eventually they're going to see you as a person who's just simply taking work and not bringing anything to the table. So I think being in that growth mindset, it does two things. One, it makes you grow your practice. And two, it shows people that you're constantly looking to be more than simply a cost to a firm. You are an asset. I'm going to speak about measurable results here. Growth strategy focuses on creating content and driving traffic to your firm's website. I think a lot of this presentation, I'm going to speak about driving traffic to a website, online and offline. And really what I'm going to speak about is really how we tell people about ourselves through a variety of different channels, whether it be websites, newsletters, books, podcasts. All these things are important. So, a growth mindset attorney. Growth mindset attorney does the following things. And these are the 5 strategies that I think are very important for your practice. Number 1, we create content. And I'll speak about creating content, why that's so important. Next, we distribute content. And again, it's not enough to create it, but how do we push it out to the market? How do we tell people who we are and what we do? Next is collects data. Collecting data. How many people here have an active client list? Meaning that how many people in this room maintain a client list? And how often do you reach out to that client list? Once a month? Okay. And is that because of just, is that guaranteed once a month, or is that?
It's more updates, so as long as there's something substantive in the law that changes.
Okay. What about people who've hired us in the past, but are not necessarily clients now? How often do you reach out to them?
Kind of keep them in the same loop, even if they're not active. Just kind of update.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of collecting data, what I mean by that is, in terms of when a person comes to your law firm, whether they hire you or not, once they hire you, obviously you want to maintain their contact information. Once they leave your law firm because you've finished your business with them, or they perhaps aren't ready to hire you, keeping their information is important. And constantly keeping in contact with that individual is important because, again, attorneys aren't like the doctors, barbers, and other services that occur every week or month or year. You don't really know when you're going to need a lawyer in many cases, at least in my practice. So a person could be going along in their lives and may not need me for a year or two, and then suddenly their nephew has a problem and they call me. So in my business, I think that if a person calls my office, whether they're a friend of a friend, a source of influence in the community, I want to maintain that information, and I want to educate that person constantly about my law firm on a continuous basis. In our firm, what I like to do is try to touch my clients and prospective clients and people who've hired me in the past 165 times a year. And the way I do that is a weekly email, a monthly newsletter, a blog, podcast, videos, books, in addition to simply putting out a holiday card, which I actually don't even put out anymore. I think holiday cards, I don't think that they're effective. I'm more of a fan of, if it's the holidays, you send something of value to a colleague or a friend to show them, hey, this is what's happening in my firm. I think personally, when I get a holiday card from a law firm, I look at it, okay, I'll put it, on my mantle in my office for a week, maybe 2, and then it'll get thrown out, right? But I think the better practice is possibly to send something of value, which I'll speak about a little later. But I think the important thing is that you're creating value for people. You're showing people why they should hire you versus another law firm. Next, remove barriers, and I'll speak about that a little later. But basically, how easy it is to contact your law firm. And I think a lot of people confuse this with simply having a phone number which you can call that's easy to remember. I think when I started my practice years ago, a person told me that I got really lucky because I got a phone number that was really easy to remember. It was 215-755-9000. And it was because I had an office across from Methodist Hospital. And at the time, Methodist was changing over. And I think they had just shut down a ward. And that ward's phone number was 215-755-9000. So I must have called just at the right time because they gave me that phone number. Well, what happened was Methodist wanted the phone number back. So, or I think people assumed that that phone number would become active again. And to this day, I still get phone calls about once a week asking if this is the emergency department or if this is some department in Methodist Hospital. But the number is easy to remember. But I think that a lot of law firms are focused on getting the phone number. How do we get the right combination of phone numbers? Because that's really the secret sauce when it comes to making contact. And in reality, it's not. It's how easy it is to contact your firm. And finally, follow-ups. Follow-ups are really, it's the last piece, but it's probably the most important piece. To me, the first question I ask people sometimes is when a person calls your law firm and wants to speak to you about something, and you have a 5-minute conversation, and the person says, well, thank you, miss or sir, for that information. Let me think about it. How many of you have clients who said, hey, let me think about it? Who says that? Clients ever said to you, let me think about it? And they never call back, right? Now, some of us believe that perhaps the client, hired another lawyer, or some of us, like me, think that the client went out there and did hire somebody else. But the reason they hired somebody else was because the other law firm did a better job of educating that client on why we were the better law firm for them. So in my practice, whenever you call our firm, we're going to maintain your information and continue to market to you in an educational way, whether you hire us or not. So you will get our monthly newsletter, you will get our information on a continuous basis from now until really the end of time. We won't stop marketing to you forever. Now, people may say that that's really a kind of not a cost-effective strategy, but in reality, it is. And I'll speak about that a little later, but the reality is that the few dollars that it costs to maintain a marketing list and the nominal amount that it costs to send out a few extra pieces of mailing to potential clients, it will pay dividends down the road. Okay, so these 5 strategies, which I just laid out, there's no shortcuts to success as far as marketing your practice. I always say that marketing is like exercising. Consistency is key. So if you exercise once a month or once a week, you're probably not going to see too many health benefits from it. But if you exercise continuously, even if you do, they say 20 minutes, 3 days a week, you will see dramatic benefit to it. And marketing is the same way. If you work on your marketing a little bit consistently every day or a few days a week, you will see dramatic results because you will see a systematic approach developing instead of simply saying, well, marketing is something we do when business is slow. Cases aren't coming in, so how do we fix it? Let's up our marketing. And people believe that increasing your marketing simply means calling the local paper or calling the local news channel and saying, we want to spend $25,000 on advertising, or calling the latest web designer or the IT consultant who will come in here and fix everything. And a lot of people think that there's some magic formula, that we can simply pay money and spend our way out of it. And I have to tell you that a lot of these consultants online, look, nobody knows exactly what the secret formula is to online searching. So any consultant who says, I can get you on the first page of Google, or I can do this, I can do that, just pay me, $3,000 a month and your problems are solved. It's not that simple, because the internet and Google and all the search engines are far past what 99.9% of consultants do. Their systems, their algorithms are far more complex than any local company, including companies like FindLaw and Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis. All these companies, compared to Google, are in the Stone Age. They know nothing about what Google does, and they're simply guessing. And I'm not saying what they do is simply ineffective. It does work. But a lot of firms, especially smaller firms, can't afford to give a web consultant $4,000 or $5,000 a month to simply blow up Google AdWords. So there has to be another approach. There has to be an approach that's more systematic, an approach that's effective, but really it's more than just simply paying money. Because paying money, it can work, but sometimes you pay money and you don't know why you're paying money. It's obviously great to spend money on marketing, but you have to know why you're spending it, as opposed to just throwing money at it and hoping it's going to work. A lot of these strategies focus on authority building, and we're going to build the authority based on our content. People want to see us as the market leader. Again, being the market leader means that you are the authority through education. Attorneys, accountants, doctors, people are hiring knowledge. It isn't like we're out there painting houses or we're selling a product like this remote control. We're selling ourselves, but the people are buying us being the service. So we have to convey to people why we're the superior product. And really how that's done is simply through education. Now, a lot of us may get cases simply through word of mouth because of relationships, and that's great, that happens. But in my opinion, to rely on people sending you cases because of some past relationship, to me, it's not enough to sustain you through the tough times, because we're all going to get slow. And if you don't have a way of pulling your firm out of a tailspin, you will quickly find that what you're doing isn't working. And spending money, you may be so slow that you can't afford to spend money. So you're left with simply waiting and perhaps losing your business or doing something else. Okay, so creating content. Step one. It's more than just putting words on the paper on your screen. Way back when the internet was first created, content simply meant using the words a lot. So if you were an attorney, if you notice, the old websites use the words over and over again. So for instance, in my practice, in the past, the way you got to the top of Google was you had a page and you stuffed it with words. So criminal defense, if that was your practice, you wrote that word everywhere. Criminal defense, if your practice was focused on guns, drugs, and DUI, you made sure that every other line you put the word guns, drugs, and DUI wherever you could find it. And if you wanted cases in Philadelphia, Montgomery County, well then you wanted to put those words as much as you could, and the content wasn't really content. It was simply kind of advertising. And the internet, initially, Google wasn't that savvy, and the search engine algorithms simply looked for the most times the word would appear, and simply ranked according to that. And what happened was Google got smart, and it gets smarter every day. So now the search algorithms are focused on quality content, and they actually look, and I don't know how they do it, but what they look at is the quality of your content. So simply creating words isn't enough. You actually have to create good content that's valuable. How they find it valuable, I'll speak about it, but really it's focused on creating knowledge for people. So I spoke a little earlier about attorney advertising, and people, in terms of content, some people believe that if your content says the right things, people are going to hire you. So I'm an aggressive criminal defense attorney in Philadelphia, hire me. So how is that ad any different from the other criminal defense lawyer ads? They all said the same thing. Now look, you may hire me because you know me. You may hire me because you saw me last week. You may hire me because your cousin said I did a great job for him. That happens. But there's a lot of clients out there who simply search, who have no relationship whatsoever with any attorney. And there's a lot of work out there for people in terms of people looking for lawyers. And those people are searching based on, well, what attorney really, in their opinion, knows the most about their problem. And the way you do that is creating content that shows that. What you don't want is to leave consumers with making a choice based on who had the better ad. So did they hire you because your ad said aggressive and you're a pit bull, or did they hire you because your ad said that you're a tiger or whatever you were? Okay? You don't want that. You want people to hire you because of value. Because if they're hiring you because of value, when they walk into your firm and you give them a fee schedule, they're not so put off by it. Because we've all paid for services and products in the past, and we've all overpaid before. But a lot of us don't have a problem with overpaying for a service if we believe that the service will give us what we want. It happens every day. We go to a certain mechanic for our cars, or go to a certain company to have our houses exterminated because we know that it's a little extra, but it's going to work. I think a few years ago, my wife had an issue at her office, so that they had to have a electrician come in and fix it. And the company that they hired was far more expensive than a lot of other quotes they got. But they hired this company because this company did a great job of educating my wife and her colleagues about what they were going to do at her office to fix the problem. So the fact the price was $1,000 more, okay, but they had more confidence. And really what you want is confidence, not a person who's coming to you simply because you're the cheapest. Okay, so I say it right here. Spending $1,000 on print, radio, and internet advertising is one approach, but it's expensive. Internet ads cost money. Who's familiar with pay-per-click? Google AdWords? Okay, the most expensive Google AdWords right now are actually attorney ads. So attorney personal injury ads, it will cost you, on average, $230 a click. That's what the cost is. And criminal defense, they're expensive too. DUI ads could run about the same amount. So it's very easy. A firm could spend easily $10,000 a month on pay-per-click. And you may not get nothing because you may not have a system in place to handle those calls. If you're spending $10,000 on pay-per-click, but you're not there to answer the calls 24 hours a day, the person who does pick up the phone doesn't know what to do. Or when you get the information, you speak to the person, you say, hey, we had a 5-minute conversation, they weren't interested, and you take the person's information on a Post-it note and you throw it out, that's not really effective. In fact, you're probably wasting about 85% of your dollars. It's okay to spend money. In fact, I encourage it. It is helpful, but a lot of people who spend a lot of money on advertising and marketing waste it because they don't collect the information, they don't use the information once they have it, and they simply believe that because they spent money, they're going to make money because they spent it. And that's simply not the case anymore. Consumers today, unlike ever before, can access information on their phones, on their tablets. All of us have iPhones, all of us have iPads, a lot of us do. Even my kids, who are 3 and 5, can work the iPad now. It's crazy. Kids know. My son, who just turned 5, can literally use the iPad and scroll. He knows how to swipe. When I was a kid, I couldn't tell you how to work my parents' VCR. I still can't work the VCR, well, DVD. But the point is that kids today are learning from a very early age how to work technology. So when these children become adults, they want the information instantly. So right now, kids are confused by commercials. Who has kids here? Okay. So have your kids ever asked you about why the commercial's on? My children don't understand the concept of commercials. They don't get it. They think someone broke the TV set. So when the commercial comes on, Daddy, what's happening? Why is this man on my TV? I want to watch Dora the Explorer. And the problem is that kids are used to having TV on demand all the time. When I was a kid, you wanted to watch a TV show, it was on at 3 o'clock. If you missed it, oh well. I mean, they might have had a tape available, maybe, but now, if your children want to watch, Dora the Explorer or Paw Patrol at 1 o'clock in the morning, there it is. And really, professional services is the same way. People are searching online all the time. So websites. Websites are huge, but is your website what they call responsive? Are you creating an environment for people to make it easy for them to find you and to learn about your law firm? If your website, even if it's a low-budget website, it's still, at the very least, it should be easy to use on a smartphone or a tablet. If it's not, whatever you spend on the website, you have to make a change, because responsiveness for a website is so important nowadays, because people are more and more, I think we tested it, 65% of our traffic comes from tablets and phones. We can track, based on Google Analytics, how our calls come in. And 65% of my traffic comes from online tablets. And really, it makes sense, because usually if I'm searching for a service or a product, I'm at home, I'm not on my desktop, I'm on my iPad, watching my kids and kind of trying to do two things at once. We're all multitasking. So ease of connection is important now more than ever before, because in the past, if you needed a lawyer, perhaps you went in the Yellow Pages, perhaps you asked around, but now with the internet, you can do a pretty extensive search on your lawyer and find a lot about them. Okay, so what are consumers looking for? Consumers are looking for evidence that the attorney can deliver results for them. And again, you're hiring knowledge. And how do you demonstrate knowledge? A lot of law firms are simply putting out ads, and their websites are all saying the same thing. When they do put out content, the content is, we're a great law firm because we just hired this person. We're a great law firm because we just opened up this new office. But you're not giving the people any value. You're not telling them why they should retain your firm versus another firm. Again, a lot of it's about giving people value. What are you giving people? But content is more than just saying that our firm's in Philadelphia, we're aggressive, hire us today, we have this easy to remember telephone number, hire us right now. Content is really giving people on a continuous basis knowledge that they can use and they can understand. And at the end of the day, they can say, well, we're going to hire Gambone's firm or Smith's firm because Smith is the superior attorney over Jones and Jackson. What I just said. Creating content doesn't mean creating information about the latest hire. That's important to show that your firm has growth, but it shouldn't be the only thing. I think a lot of firms, when they send out advertisements or information about their law firm, it all says the same thing. It all says that we've recently hired someone, hire us. And again, that's not enough. One of the phrases you'll hear a lot nowadays is content is king in professional services. And content is king because for search engines, that's how they're evaluating firms. They're evaluating firms based on the amount of content you have on the internet. It isn't simply based on spending money on advertising. That can help you, but if you don't have the content to back it up, very quickly you'll find that people aren't going to go to you because you're simply not giving them enough value. Creating content means that you have to put it out there all the time. Large law firms, even mid-sized firms, a lot of them will have now blogs, but the blogs are empty. They'll update the blog once a month or once every 2 months or put out a quarterly newsletter. In my opinion, your blog should be updated at least twice a week. Twice a week, you should be updating your blog. Email newsletter should be once a week. Mail newsletter should be once a month. And again, reaching out to your clients, past clients, and prospective clients, it should be done on a systematic basis. You should know when you're going to do it, and your staff should know when it's going to happen, because again, to me, that's one of the most important parts of your marketing message. Consistency. Consistency is key. Creating content is like working out. What I said before. If you're creating content once a month or once a week, you're really not going to see a benefit. But if you're creating content on a consistent basis, people are going to see you as the authority. And it's simply not enough to say, well, we're going to write an ad or we're going to write an article once a month and find that, try to educate people on what we do. Because what happens is a lot of people who get articles emailed to them once a month, what happens is a lot of people just simply disregard them. I know from our email newsletter, our list is a couple thousand emails now. And on an average basis, we send out an email once a week to our email list. And on average, about 150 people open it up. 150. Of that 150, about 10 to 15 people click on it. Okay, so out of 2,000, about 150 actually open it. And of that 150, about 15 actually click the link. So right then and there, you see that content is a numbers game. So if you're just doing that once a month, well, it isn't that effective. But if you do it once a week, 10 to 15 people once a week, people are going to continuously know who your firm is, and you're educating them on the value that you can provide. Okay, so people often ask, how do we create content? Creating content, really, to me, is taking what you're doing right now and talking about it. So all of us have cases, all of us have issues right now. To me, the easiest way to create content is to take a case that you're working on. Obviously, you don't have to mention the client's name, but that should be the focus of your blog that week, of your article that month. That's the easiest way for me to create content. At least in my practice, I have plenty of issues every day that come in that I can use to create an article. And these articles typically don't have to be long. We're talking 300 to 500 words at the most. I've always been told don't go below 400 words because for some reason Google doesn't like that. But if you stay to me about 300 to 500 words, that's a good amount of content. When you do create it, don't think that the search engines aren't paying attention to what you're creating. So things like grammar, organization, style, and even spelling are important. Now, I know that Google, if you type in the wrong spelling of a word, it kind of fixes it for you, and it makes you, it actually takes you to the right thing that you're looking for. But if you have well-drafted content, it actually ranks higher than content that's not well-drafted. So if again, I'm not talking that you have to spend hours and hours, but to me, whenever content leaves my office, I usually read it 2 or 3 times, at least just to make sure that it sounds correct, that there's bullet points, that for the most part, obviously, it may have a few errors in there, but take the time to put out quality content. Titles. Titles of your content are extremely important. Again, it's more than just putting the words like criminal charges. You want to use titles to draw people in. They say on average the most interesting titles are things like the most common ways, the 5 reasons why. We all use the internet for information. So a lot of us who search type things like this. At least I do. When I'm searching for things for something, I want to know the best way to fix my coffee machine, or the best way to make something, or the most common problem with this TV set that I want to buy. Again, these are words that people use. So the title of the article is extremely important. So creating content is obviously one of the critical points in terms of educating your clients, but there has to be a way of drawing them in. Okay, so the next part, distributing content. Creating content obviously makes your firm the authority, but the way you push it out to the market is important. People have to know your firm is there. And distributing content obviously raises your visibility in the market. And the way you do that is with your blog. To me, the blog is more than just words on your screen or on a piece of paper. The blog is how all the content is initially generated in your office. In our firm, we put out newsletters, books, radio broadcasts, videos, and all that content started with our blog. So on average, I try to blog twice a week. So if you figure 1,000 words a week, 52 weeks a year, 50 weeks a year, maybe I give myself a little vacation, 50,000 words. Well, I have plenty of content for books and newsletters. Okay, so people often ask, well, how do you write 4 or 5 books? How do you do newsletters? And really the key is that I take all my blogs, all my newsletters, and I merge everything to just one format. And I spend a weekend and I read through the 100 and something pages and I edit it. To me, creating content isn't the problem. It's editing it, right? So to create a book, the content's already there. I just have to edit it. And a book, a newsletter, to me, is so incredibly valuable. Because when you come to my office, whether you hire me or not, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you this book free, and it's going to set me apart from other firms. When you call me, or if you meet me at a local event, a community event, or a networking event, even if you're another lawyer, I'm going to still probably send you a book, a newsletter, or something. Because it's more than just an email saying, hey, Bob, it was great meeting you at this last CLE. I hope to see you soon. Because what's going to happen is Bob and myself are going to get probably 50 emails like that over the course of the year. But you know what? Gambone sent Bob a book. And every month, Gambone sends Bob a newsletter. And every week, Gambone sends Bob an email. And meanwhile, Jones and Jackson over there, who met Bob at the same CLE, just shook Bob's hand, gave him a business card. Hey, let's do lunch sometimes. Now look, lunch is great, okay? I think that we've all been in positions where a person has bought us lunch or done something for us, and we felt obligated almost to hey, the next time I have a case, I'm going to try to send it his way or her way. We've all done that. But what happens is, ultimately, over the course of the year, we're going to have the same lunch with 4 or 5 other people. So you have to have a way of sticking out. So to me, education is the key. And to me, I don't want to sell my services. Again, it's not about selling, it's about educating. We're attorneys, it's a professional service. We want people to focus on us, the value, as opposed to us, the price. Okay, so the blog is the launching pad for all other content. It's, again, what happens in our firm, when I blog, it goes out to our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. It has to go out immediately. So it's always updated constantly. And for the most part, we assume that people, for the most part, are probably not going to read our blog posts on an average basis. But if you're blogging continuously, and most people check Facebook at least once a day, right? Probably. Who checks Facebook at least once a day in the room? All right, so, and when you check Facebook, most of us kind of breeze through most of it very, very quickly. And once in a while, we'll actually stop on a blog from an attorney or some other person if it kind of fits within our mindset that day. So blogging, to me, on a continuous basis, that's what it does. It lets people know that, hey, this person, Gambone, he blogs constantly. So whether it's drugs, guns, DUI, I want people to think, whenever they think about guns, drugs, and DUI, think about me. And the way I do that is to constantly pound the market with information. And good information. Information about a case, information about the updates in the law, information on the difference between constructive possession and actual possession, information on things like breathalyzers and blood tests and the Supreme Court's ruling on blood, things like that. That's all important information because, again, none of us really know when a person's going to need our services. I mean, there are practices where attorneys are needed continuously, but there are a lot of practices out there where people hire attorneys based on, hey, we have a problem. We need a lawyer right now. Who are we going to hire? And look, legal services are expensive. They are expensive. Whether it's a small practice or a larger practice, our bills can be substantial. So if we're asking a person to give us a retainer of $10,000, $15,000, $25,000, a lot of times the people giving us that money, it isn't so much the money. It's really, can you solve our problem? Because a lot of people, in my opinion, the clients I want my office aren't the ones who are going to give me the $1,000 like it's their last dollar. I don't want those clients. I want the client who's going to give me $10,000 and say, look, here's the money, just solve the problem. Because if the client who's giving you their last dollar, it's the expectation level, number one, is just off the charts. And number two, the client's so focused on the money they gave you that if you don't give that client exactly what they wanted, they're going to find an issue with it. And really, in the legal world, it's very hard to solve the problem exactly the way the client wanted. There's always some kind of wrinkle to a problem. So to me, that's where the value and the education comes in. Again, I spoke about losing cases. And the reason why we do that is because I want clients to know this isn't math. This isn't engineering. We're not going to exactly, get this problem solved exactly the way you wanted it done. So we're not cutting out widgets here. This is a fluid problem that requires us to maybe go to court, and there's a lot of factors here. So just know going in, yes, you've paid us for representation, but that representation, there are risks, and we will do our best to service you. But understand that you've hired us because we are the ones who are in the best position to solve your problem. And again, it isn't about focusing on the money, it's about focusing on the value that you provide. Okay, so blogging isn't random. A lot of attorneys think that the blogging is, hey, a funny thing that happened in court today. Don't do that. I really think it's a bad policy. In fact, I can't stand when I see a lawyer putting on a blog about the crazy client. The crazy client who hired me today, what an idiot. Or I've actually seen lawyers on Facebook talk about clients like this goof or, I mean, really? I mean, what are you doing? Because people read that. People are forwarding that. Whenever you write a piece of content, assume that someone's going to read it. Not only read it, forward it. And if you're the lawyer kind of making a joke of your practice, especially a practice where people are paying you thousands of dollars, it's not a joke to these people. It's not. It's real life. So, and especially in a practice like criminal defense or personal injury, we're dealing with people's lives. And to make a joke of it, it may seem funny to you and your friends, but in reality, those are like random thoughts that are best for, look, we all have funny stories about clients. Fine. And I'm not saying that we all don't discuss it in our own personal circles, but to put it out there on social media is just a bad policy. And again, what I just said, write with the assumption that someone's going to forward it. And if it's written poorly, it's not only hurting you for search engine reasons, it's also going to hurt you for the purposes of your brand image. If people see sloppy content and see content as just these random thoughts or worse, like jokes, it's just a bad position to be in. People don't want to hire this comedian. They want an expert who's going to solve their problem, especially if you're paying thousands of dollars. And really, people say, well, in practices where there's contingency fees, the clients aren't paying you. Well, they are. They're just not paying you up front. Blogging is about consistency. If you're consistent, you will distinguish yourself from 95% of the firms, because most people who blog don't do it consistently. They do it once a month. Most law firms' blogs are once a month, if that. If you're consistent with your blog, the fact that you're consistent, that in and of itself will distinguish you from other people. And again, it's about setting yourself apart, and the way you do that is through education. When you blog, it's important to keep people on your page. Okay, so if you're blogging, you don't want to blog on something like Facebook or LinkedIn and actually put the content on those sites. You want the content to be back on your website because, again, you want to drive people back to your website. So in your blog, if, for instance, you're blogging on something like DUI, well, if the blog topic is DUI breathalyzer test, within that blog article should be links to other articles that you've written because the purpose is to keep people on your site. Because the longer they're on your site, the more they're interacting with your firm, the better chance you have of them actually hiring you later on. So what is the advantage of social media? So, social media, most of us have a large number of friends, and we can blast it out, and it goes out to our friends and friends of their friends, and very quickly it can kind of permeate through the social media system, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook. The disadvantage is that people kind of scroll through it fast, and that's where your email newsletter comes in. And this is where I'll speak about collecting content a little later. But email, that's where email has an advantage over social media. Because if you're sending an email that's direct, as opposed to social media where it's just kind of a shotgun approach. Email, we all get emails from advertisements, but normally if you're getting an email from a person you've met or a person you know, you're at least going to look at it. As opposed to social media, if Bob or Michael are posting something on social media, there's more of a chance you're going to scroll through it, as opposed to an email, where if it's an email directly to the individual, especially at certain points of the day, and there's a whole science on when to send an email, when not to send an email. Is it 8 o'clock in the morning? Is it 8:30 in the morning? Actually, I went to a seminar one time. They told me not to send an email at exactly 8 o'clock, exactly at 8:30, or exactly at 9:30. It had to be like 8:32 or 8:35 or 8:37, because apparently they said that some email systems are set up to look at spam. And if you send it at like exactly at 9 o'clock, the system would say, oh, it's spam because it's sent exactly at 9 o'clock. No one emails exactly at 9 o'clock. So to send it, now again, is that some internet trick or myth? I don't know. But there are rumors out there like that. So I guess if you want to kind of check and make sure that your email's not being spammed, that's kind of a thing to think about. As far as emails, I'll speak about collecting information a little later. But again, it's important to have an email list and to have a mailing list. Okay, so email is great, but don't underestimate the power of traditional mailings. Now, traditional mailing is expensive. Okay, in your folders, I have a newsletter that I put out once a month. There's a black and white copy and there's a color copy. The black and white is obviously much less expensive than the color copy. Color's nice, but in terms of being cost effective, what I found is the black and white works just as well, and it educates people just as well, and people appreciate it. Now look, I know there's people out there who get that newsletter and probably just toss it in the trash. But a lot of people get it, and if it's a Friday or a Saturday, they get it, and just leaf through it, especially if they're home, as opposed to an email. Even if they're not in line to hire an attorney this week, the fact that they've gotten something from a lawyer, it's free, and it tells the person, hey, I'm available, I know what I'm doing, give me a call. I think that it is expensive to put out a paper newsletter. On average, it costs our firm almost sometimes between $1,500 and $2,000 a month for a paper newsletter. Okay, email is free, but obviously there's less of a chance with the paper mail that a person will disregard it. But that's the cost of doing business. Same goes with books and brochures. I think books are great. And if your firm is thinking about creating a book, there's a variety of ways to do it. The one that you have there is a book that I created on my own with a local printer. You can get more complex. I put out 3 other books that are much more complete in terms of they look a lot cleaner. But the fact that a person comes to my office, and whether you hire me or not for a DUI, the fact that you've left my office with a book on DUI, it means something. If I met you at a conference and you ask me what I do, and I give you my business card, and I follow the business card up with a book or a newsletter, the business cards, we all lose them. I mean, how many of us have gotten business cards at a conference or a CLE, put them in our pocket and washed the shirt? I've washed my attorney ID 3 times already. Yeah, so, but it happens. But again, the follow-up's important. Books are good because I think people are less likely to throw them out. as opposed to emails where they delete them, blog posts which you ignore. Books are great. I think a lot of my books, over the course of 2 years, I think I've mailed out about 3,000 books. And I've sent 4 books, about 1,000 each, I've actually sent over the course of the year. And I'm pretty confident that a lot of those books are sitting on people's, just paper book stand or whatever, but they're there. And I try to make the colors pop, so people can kind of remember, look at the book and say, oh, well, Gambone, he's the guy who does criminal defense. And I think that's important because, again, there are so many lawyers nowadays, and competition is so stiff. If you're not distinguishing yourself in some way, to me, you're relying on a person hiring you simply because of some abstract idea or some relationship that may be hot or cold depending on what time of year it is. Offline content is also great for community events. A lot of firms are doing community events now but not giving anything. So firms now, I think any law firm or any accounting firm or any physician's firm that is having a community event, and I tell my wife this all the time because she's a family doctor, and I said, you just had this event at the hospital, and you had this big tent, and you and your partner spent a considerable amount of money there, but you didn't give people anything. You gave people a little trinket that most people are just going to throw out. But if you had given a free book from your doctor on the 5 ways to cut your cholesterol, 1, it came from your doctor. 2, it was free. And 3, it tells you something that's important in a format that's easy to read. Because you're a physician, you're an attorney, people assume that you have some knowledge, more knowledge than the average individual. But can you convey that knowledge to an individual without making them feel like, oh my God, what do I do now? So if you give them something, and to me, giving a book or a brochure that actually means something, not something that's just one book of advertisements. There are law firms out there that put these advertisements about books that they've written. And a few times I've actually ordered the books just to see what it is. And I get the book in the mail. It's not really a book. What it is it's a big advertisement that's just how great we are. And it doesn't give any knowledge. It just simply gives advertisements to people. And I think if you're creating a book, if you're spending time, be proud of the work, and I think that it will pay dividends down the road because people will see you as the educator as opposed to a salesman. Okay, so that's the end of our first hour. We'll take a 15-minute break. All right, so we're back for our second hour. And we're still focused on distributing content. What I said earlier, attorneys are unique professionals. Dressers, like hairdressers, barbers, mechanics, even doctors, and dentists especially. Your dentist, should be sending you something every 6 months. So for instance, in my case, my dentist really loves me because I see him 4 times a year, and it's still not enough. So, but unlike a lot of other professionals, there isn't a schedule. So accountants, you do your taxes, around year end, they're going to start asking for information. You have to give it to them. Attorneys aren't like that for the most part, especially in things like personal injury, criminal defense, and other practices where you're dealing with a lot of people. There's really no set schedule. And that's why it's so important to be in a person's mind all the time. I know my dentist, for instance, even though I kind of have a set schedule with her, she sends me information. So there's a text message that I get from her, and that's important. Whereas my dentist that I had as a kid would never send anything out. And my parents would just go religiously, every 6 months. But now that dentist who has since retired probably wouldn't do as well, because now people are looking for something more. They want more of an experience whenever they see a professional person. And that's just not for attorneys, it's for any professional services. People want to have more of a connection. And before, perhaps when there was maybe less competition in our field, it wasn't as important. But nowadays, you have to have people, again, it's an on-demand society, much like my children. They expect things all the time whenever they want it. And it's easy to get. When I was a kid, we had a book report. You got to go to the library, or if you weren't lucky enough to get a set of encyclopedias at your house, go there during normal business hours, and guess what? If the library was closed, you were stuck. Unless you had a buddy who had a set, you were pretty much stuck till the next day. Now, my niece and nephew can do book reports whenever they want. There's information all the time. And again, professional services are headed in the same direction. So again, at the minimum, I think offline content monthly, online content weekly. I think it's important. And your mailing list can be, whether it's 200 or 2,000, it's important to send something out. As far as the cost, it depends. It depends on how complex you want to get. But really, it really isn't that expensive when you break it down. It's actually much less expensive than taking out an ad in a small-time newspaper. I know with even a local paper, like a review or a chronicle of some sort, an ad's expensive. An ad in a local paper, even a third of a page, it could run you $600 a week, easy. And that's one day. And it's blasted out to 50,000 people, whatever it is, but it's expensive. So if you can spend that once a week, so it costs you on average between $2,000 to $3,000 a month. So if it costs you $800 to send out, or even less, to send out a paper newsletter, and you know for a fact it's getting the people who you've touched before, you've met, they know you, there's a personal connection, it's much, much more effective than taking out the ad that, by the way, is grouped with a bunch of attorneys who are all, by the way, saying the same thing. I'm aggressive, I'm good, I'm the most knowledgeable attorney in Philadelphia. We're all going to say that. I mean, who's going to take out an ad that says that we're not good? Who's going to say that? No one's going to say. Of course, we're all super lawyers. And again, sometimes I get on super lawyers. Look, I'm a member of that listing, and it's important to have it. I think it's a nice thing to have. But I think sometimes people see it as this like huge award that it's really not. It's a marketing tactic, okay? And if everyone has it, you're the same. You're all the same. So if I'm a super lawyer, and Jackson's a super lawyer, and Jones is a super lawyer, we're all super lawyers. So are they going to hire me because I have a nicer tie, or I have nice shoes, or whatever it is? I don't want that. I want them to hire me because they think Alfonso Gambone is the best person for this problem. Because if they're hiring me because of the tie or the shoes, well then when I say here, my retainer is $10,000, they're going to say, wait a second, Jones is $8,000. So I'm going to hire Jones because he's cheaper. Sorry. Okay, so when you distribute content, it's important to have a call to action. Call to action is so important. People often ask what a call to action is. You want people to do something. So when I see advertisements, especially for attorneys or doctors or accountants, what do you see? You say, call this number, call 215-755-9000. And people think, well, how big is the number? In fact, I worked with an attorney one time who told me that it's very important that our phone number be very, very big, and people see it. And I'm not saying it's not important that it's not visible. It's obviously important. But the point is that you need more than that. Okay, just having the great phone number isn't enough. You want people to do something. So is it get our free book, go to my website, get a video, get something, do something. Learn more about me. Because again, if they're just looking at the ad and then comparing my ad with Jackson, and Jackson says we're both super lawyers, well then it's almost like, well, just pick one. But if I'm saying call my office, or don't even call, go to the website, look at what I have, and compare my site to my nearest competitor, and I'm going to blow you away, okay? Because the average, talk about content, you could actually check how much content you have online, okay? There's a free website, which I can give you later, but basically, it can tell you how many pages you have on Google, okay? So I know our law firm has 1,500 pages on Google, meaning that I've created 1,500 pages of content. The closest competitor is like 400. All right, so that tells me right away that if you go online and I'm competing with 2 other law firms, the content and the information that you find on our firm's website is by far superior to any other firm out there. And that's the position that you want to be in because, again, you don't want people to make a decision based on some abstract idea about, well, he's good because so-and-so said that he's the best. Because again, people do compare, especially with the internet nowadays. People read things like client reviews. All these things are important. A lot of attorneys now, for some reason, aren't keeping track of their online profiles. They're ignoring it. And that's wrong. I don't care if you work for a big law firm or a small law firm. If you have an Avvo profile, who knows about Avvo? Okay, so all of us have Avvo profiles. Whether you know it or not, 97% of the people out there have an Avvo, 97% of the attorneys have Avvo profiles. So unless you're in some cave, Avvo knows about you. Okay? Now the question is, what does your Avvo profile say? Is it blank? And worse, does it say he or she is not concerned about their profile? And people see that because if you Google your name right now, there's a very good chance your Avvo profile will come up on page 1. So some people will type in criminal defense lawyer Philadelphia and you might come up. But if they've heard your name because you sent them a piece of information and they Google you and they blow past your website and they see your Avvo profile and they hit it and it's blank. I say, wait a second, this person, where is he? He's a phantom. I don't know. I'm concerned whether or not this person is the best person for the job. I mean, and that's where content comes in because people want to. You never know how long it's going to take for a person to hire an attorney. People procrastinate. No one wants to hire lawyers. Okay, they don't want to do it. Going to see your lawyer usually isn't a fun experience. It's usually a problem that you had, especially in my business. Something's happened. It was a DUI. Your son or daughter was arrested. It's serious. And not only serious, it's a bad kind of serious. Okay, so now the next point I'm going to speak about is collecting data. A lot of law firms spend money on advertising, but very few collect information. So collecting information is so important because that's how you're going to build your marketing list. And really, your marketing list is really one of your firm's most important assets because eventually your list is what's going to pull you out of the tough times and it's going to give you a means of kind of generating work when perhaps work is slow. If you're not collecting information, you're wasting your advertising dollars, the majority of them. Because again, when a person calls your office, we're a professional service. We're not selling a simple product like an apple, okay? You go to the store, you buy an apple, you get a bad apple, you go back. It's a very low value commitment. With legal services, you're talking a substantial amount of money. And people are going to not only price shop, but also value shop. And most people, most consumers, especially the consumers that you want as clients who have the ability to spend a considerable amount of money, aren't going to hire a person based on one telephone conversation. I wouldn't. Who would buy a car based on one meeting? Most of us wouldn't, right? Most of us, if we're going to buy, pick a car, Lexus. If our choice is Lexus, BMW, Mercedes. Most of us are going to go see all 3 dealerships, and we're going to come back and think about it. So if I go to Lexus and sit down with the sales representative, of course he's going to say Lexus is a great car. It's great. And Mercedes, guess what? Same thing. And so is BMW. The issue becomes, well, why am I going to take the Lexus over the BMW? And a lot of it is the follow-up. If the Lexus rep calls me and says, hey, Mr. Gambone, I want to take you back out for a test drive, and by the way, I want to email you some information about the car. Here's what it can do for your kids. It's safe, blah, blah, blah. That is important. I know that when we were shopping for our last car, my wife's big thing was how to get a Volvo. Why? Because Volvo is the safest car. Our kids have to be in a tank. And my wife bought a tank. I mean, she bought this Volvo. It's the X90. It's a tank. I mean, literally, doors are heavy, and we know this car is like indestructible. But my wife was all about the safety. So, and obviously it's concerned, but in my opinion, the Lexus or the The other car we were looking at was just as safe. But Volvo had pounded so much information in our heads about Volvo, safety. Volvo, safety. Other cars, not so safe. So we were already kind of primed. So when we walked in the Volvo, there wasn't much of a sales job going on. Whereas Lexus had to tell us why the Lexus was just as safe as the Volvo. But prior to going in, Volvo had all over their website about Volvo's safety. I'm not sure if Volvo even still has it. The Volvo's float. Wasn't that a commercial one time at Volvo? Volvo used to market that their cars floated. It was a big thing. So people were like, God forbid, we're driving down the shore, our car flips over, we got to have a Volvo. So, I mean, to them, to my wife, she had already read the marketing, read the information, was an educated consumer, and she walked right in and bought a Volvo, as opposed to other cars. And it's a part of your firm's intake process. At our firm, there's a formal intake process, and everyone goes through it. Whether you hire us or not, you're getting into my intake funnel. I'm keeping your information, and I'm going to market to you constantly. And I'm not, and we've set up our marketing in such a way that it's not annoying. Hopefully, at least I don't think it is. It's providing value. With my car, for example, I know with my car, I bought a car a few years ago. And the individual who sold me the car sends me an email, it feels like once a month. And now that I'm thinking about buying a new car, for something he must know, or there must be a study out there that the average individual looks about 3 to 5 years, because for some reason I've been getting just blasted with information about cars. And he's always educating me. And the reason is because I've given him my information, and he's constantly educating me on the cars. And law firms have to do the same thing. The fact that a person right now isn't interested in your services doesn't mean that you should just forget about them. And obviously, if they're clients, you want to educate them. But if they're not clients right now, you want to make sure that when the time does come, that they call you. And again, information just isn't clients and former clients and prospective clients. It's also sources of influence in your community. So to me, in the morning, I work at a local gym, and I'm good friends with the owner, and he's on my newsletter list. Now look, I'm probably never going to represent this individual. Okay, he's been in business for 30 years, but the gym has thousands of members, and I make sure he gets my information, because guess what? When a member gets in trouble, as one of them will ultimately do, a person who they might go to is a person who they have trust in. And my father used to tell me that way back when, that if you got in trouble, there was a person in the community who you would go to. And that person maybe wasn't the doctor or the lawyer, but he knew the doctor or the lawyer to go to. And you went to this person, and you sat with the person would say, you got to call this person. So, in my opinion, I want to know these people. So, if you're a source of influence in the community, and all of us kind of know people who kind of are in the, who are kind of sources of authority in the community. And again, I'm not saying just random people on a list, people you've actually met. But I like to send newsletters out to people who I know are those go-to people. So if Tom over here is kind of a person in the community who people go to and ask for advice, I want Tom to know about me. So I'm going to send Tom my information, because I want Tom, when his friend or his customer gets in trouble with a DUI, hey, call Alfonso Gambone, because Alfonso Gambone is a guy who knows what he's doing. As opposed to, call this guy. I think he's good. Okay, so if you aren't collecting information, I think that you're wasting advertising money. If you're spending, let's say, $30,000 a year on advertising, which is very easy to do. Okay, so even if you're taking out a simple ad in a local review of some sort, $700 a week, let's say. So $35,000, $40,000 a year. If you're spending $40,000 a year, and it's obviously not hard to do, but you're not taking the information that is coming into your firm and using it, well, that's all lost. So if your intake is a Post-it note that you stick on your desk and you leave, and you have 50 Post-it notes, And then of those 50, 2 hire you, and the other 48 go in the trash can. Well, that 48 you just wasted literally like $10,000, $15,000, because those people will probably only call you again if they're shopping again for the advertisement. But if you took those 48 people and put them into a database and sent them something continuously, even if they hire another law firm, they hire Jackson, there's a possibility, and a good possibility, that they may not be happy with Jackson the first time. Or they may keep Jackson. The next time a problem comes up, they may say, you know what, Jackson, he wasn't that nice of a guy or a gal, and I just want to go a different direction. They're going to hire you. But it's because you've kept in contact. But it's going to say, hey, Gambone sent me something. Even when I hired Jackson, Gambone still sent me this newsletter every month, even though I didn't give him any money. He gave me something for free. And Jackson, I gave him $10,000, and Jackson took my money. He did okay on my case. I guess I got what I wanted. Okay job. But you know what? Bad taste in my mouth. And you know what? Jackson, if I don't pay him, he doesn't give me anything. Gambone over here, I didn't ask for this, and he's giving me information for free. So again, it puts you in a value position as opposed to this just sales position. And again, a lot of attorneys think that it's just, people are going to follow you because of your reputation. I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm saying that at the end of the day, you just can't rely on the fact that people think you're great and they're going to hire you. You need to have a more systematic approach, because if you're not constantly looking a way to build your business, ultimately you're left with this, well, I think something's coming in, as opposed to, well, I know that if I reach out to 5,000 people a month, I will get a certain amount of calls at the end of the week. Okay, so removing barriers to communication. Again, this isn't an easy phone number. The 1-800 number, or it's about being easy to contact. And I think one of the things that's very important for law firms, whether you're a small law firm or a big law firm, is 24-hour calling. You have to have it. I think any law firm that has a person having voicemail, I think it's just a bad idea. Voicemail, I think, is awful. I don't like voicemail. I think to me, when you call my office right now, if my secretary doesn't answer the phone, a live person will answer. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., it's always a live person. And it's so important because we get calls on the weekends, and I don't want ever a person to call my office and get, hello, you've reached Gambone & Associates. We're not here right now. Please leave a message. Because you know what? I'm like paranoid. Okay, to me, if it's Saturday night and there's someone just arrested for a DUI and they need a lawyer right now, and they're not going to leave a message saying, hey, Alfonso, my son Bob was just arrested. Can you call me back? No. They're going to say, Gambone's not there. Who else? Keep calling until... There are people who literally call attorneys, get a list, and just keep calling. And just call until a live person picks up. Now look, this live person in our firm, if it isn't a person in our office, if it isn't my secretary, it is a service. But what the service does do is it sends me a text message saying, hey, this person just called, and it gives me their name, their phone number, what they wanted, and I can call the person back immediately. Now look, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I think the people understand that I'm sleeping. But obviously they spoke to a live individual, and the live individual will say, hey, Mr. Gambone is not available right now. Obviously it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but I've sent him a message directly to him. He will call you back. And that's how they're trained to do that. And it makes people feel good. Because it's like, well, look, I have a big problem, and I can't tell you how many cases that we've gotten just based on 24-hour calling, just based on the fact that we're there. Because if you call our office right now, some attorneys put 24-hour calling, and what is it? It's their cell phone. It's awful. I think it's the worst. I don't want clients to have my cell phone. I think it's a bad idea because I don't. Unless you're a client who I've represented and we have some other relationship, okay. Or it's a special client, okay. But the average individual, I don't want to have my cell phone. Why? Because when clients call you, what's the first thing they say? Hey, what's happening with my case? And most of us aren't in a position to answer the question because the case isn't in front of us. So to me, I want that barrier. I want the barrier between me and the client. And the barrier is my secretary or my service. And then I'll call you back, just like a doctor. If you call your doctor, unless you know the doctor personally, there's a service. So when you call my wife, you just can't usually talk to her unless you've met her and they have some relationship, fine. But for the most part, they call her service, the service calls her and says, doctor, this person has a problem. And it's either, I'm taking the call now, you're going to the ER, or I'll take a message and it isn't urgent, I'll see you Monday. And so that should happen just with law firms, because clients expect it. It's an on-demand society. 24-hour calling does not mean call my cell phone. And also, one of the most important things that we do nowadays is the live chats. People make fun of live chat sometimes. And actually, my own IT people told me, don't do the live chat. It's a bad idea. And I think, actually, I disagree. I think live chat, at least in my business, is great. Because all of us are attorneys. We kind of have a foundation in terms of our knowledge. A lot of people don't. And a lot of people do type questions on the internet. And that live chat, again, is another, it's a way of setting us apart. A different law firm may not have the live chat. So we have the live chat, 24-hour calling, it's all important. Barriers to communication is more than just having an easy phone number. It's actually being easy to contact your firm. Okay, so when they call your office, also, it's important to kind of show that you're the authority. And how do you do that? How do you set yourself apart? It's the free book, the newsletter. And again, all this is available online. So especially with millennials and younger people expect the information to be there. So I have paper books, I have paper newsletters, but I can tell you how many people have downloaded my information online because it tracks it for me. Okay, so I know 500 people have downloaded my book over the course of the year. Okay, and to me, even though I almost assume they're probably not going to read it, they may scan it, but the fact that they can go to my website and download a book and get some information for free and not have to pay for it, that already puts them in a position where they say, well, look, this attorney is actually giving me something without me actually paying anything right now. Now, obviously, they understand that eventually, I'm going to ask them for a fee and quote them a fee, but the point is that price is a secondary discussion. It's not just like the car, all right? I'm not saying that with a car, I'm not looking at the price of the car. But my wife, when we were shopping for a car, the Volvo, the Lexus, the BMW were all pretty much the same cost. There was a little difference in terms of the insurance and things like that. But for the most part, we did not buy that car because of the price. We bought that car because my wife believed, I didn't, but she believed, that the Volvo was the tank, it was the safest car. She even bought the color white because she thought it was like, that was the car that wouldn't attract attention, even though I disagree with that too. But like, it's like, it's a safe car, safe color, all these things. And again, a lot of it was just simply marketing, because I can tell you right now that Lexus has as many airbags in it as Volvo. In fact, it probably has more. Who knows? But the point is that it's the education that caused her to act. Okay, so the final step is follow-up. Now, follow-up, with a follow-up, really, it's the final step, but it's the most important step. And again, it goes back to collecting information. When a person gives you the information, it's almost assumed that they're not going to hire you. Okay? When a person calls my office, I don't really expect the person to hire me based on a telephone call. And in fact, what's the one thing that attorneys always, at least in smaller practices, it's the free consultation, right? The free consultation, come in now, get the free consultation. Everybody says that. In fact, clients assume it. I mean, most attorneys try charging for a consultation. No one's going to show up. Okay? I'm not going to pay just to talk to you. All right? Just to kind of hear what you're going to do for me. But the free consultation doesn't work. But the follow-up does. So if if Jones calls me on the phone and says, hey, Mr. Gambone, I have this problem, I explain to him what I'm going to do over the phone in 20 minutes. But again, I'm going to assume that after he's off the phone with me, he's going to speak to Jackson, Smith, and whoever. In fact, he may go to the super lawyers list, and I'm there, and 5 other people are there, and we're all super. We're all great. We've all won all our cases. We're all very fantastic. Okay? But the point is that I need to give that person something more than being a super lawyer. I need to show how I'm different. So when I'm off the phone with that guy, Jones, I'm going to have my secretary send Jones something about me. A book, a newsletter, a pamphlet, something. It says, hey, thanks for the conversation. Here's more about me. If you have any more questions, visit me online. I have 42 client reviews online. Read those. Client reviews are huge. Okay, so because people now look at them. I mean, I know with the car, we read reviews. And for professional people, people read reviews. I mean, so if you have a website like Avo that gives your clients and former clients the opportunity to give you reviews, you need to ask clients for those reviews because that's actually a point that you can use to distinguish yourself from another firm. If my competitor has 10 reviews and I have 42, and my reviews, for the most part, are good, and his are okay, but mine are like these page-long reviews, and some of my clients have given me these excellent reviews that are page-long. And Jones has 10, but the 10 he has are like, these, he was very good. Thanks, Mr. Jones. You almost like, well, is that kind of gaming the system? Did he actually, is that real? As opposed to a heartfelt, client review, you can use that. You could say, hey, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you're thinking about hiring me, check out these 42 client reviews. And it gives a person reassurance, especially in a situation where they're going to spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 with my office. If you're spending that kind of money, well, you want kind of assurances, just like with Volvo. If you're going to give Volvo a lot of money for the car, you want kind of the assurance that you're making the right decision. And people do that through research. Okay, and again, follow-up isn't meant to pressure. If you're sending follow-up communication, it isn't like, call me right now. But it is important to kind of give people kind of an education about what could happen. In some of my follow-ups, I actually, for instance, in my DUI follow-ups, when I give information to people, I usually lay out the cost of a DUI. And I'll say, if you're convicted of a DUI, you could lose your license, lose your job, your insurance rates could go up. And I list in bullet points all these things. And in fact, I think I wrote on there one time, it was a marketing thing that I was running. It was a DUI could cost you $1 million. And I laid out how it could cost you $1 million. I said, if you're a college-educated individual and you have a job with the company, and you're if you're a professional person, you get a DUI. Well, your boss may have an issue with you. He may not fire you, but he may say, hey, Bob had a DUI last month. I may not give Bob that account. I'm going to move on. Your insurance goes up. People in the community may say, hey, I heard Mr. Jones had a DUI last month. I don't think I want him, kind of on this project, or I may not give him something, or whatever. So at the end of the day, over the course of your life, a DUI could cost you $1 million if it's not handled correctly. So I'm asking you for $5,000. And it's a substantial amount of money, but if that $5,000 in exchange for that, if it puts you in a position where you're keeping your job, you don't have a criminal record, you're not losing your license, hey, it's $5,000 well spent. In fact, it's a great deal. So I think that has to be done. It isn't pressure selling, but it is telling people why your services are what they are in terms of the cost. It's an investment. It's not really a cost. It's an investment. It's the cost of doing business, but you're investing in a result that's going to give you what you want down the road. In fact, in criminal defense, a lot of the best cases aren't the most serious cases. A lot of the best cases really are cases where people aren't facing 5 or 10 years in jail. It's cases where people are facing 30 days in jail or a weekend in jail, but they have a position in society, or their children are on a path where they don't want them off that path. So they will pay whatever it is to make sure that road stays straight and narrow. as opposed to the client who's facing 10 to 20, whose record really isn't that great and probably is not going to run for Congress in 10 years from now. But the point is that, in fact, that's one of the things that we speak, criminal defense, sometimes cases you see clients facing time in jail, but they have prior convictions, so it's not really a position where they're concerned about so much being convicted. It's being convicted of the lesser offense, right? Whereas some clients who have never been convicted before of anything want this all to go away, and they'll actually pay more than the people sometimes who are facing far more serious cases. Follow-up, how long should it last? To me, 3 or 4 months, at least in my business, because to me that's kind of the timeline. In my practice, I figure once you're arrested and you're charged, it may take 3 or 4 months before you really start thinking about hiring a lawyer, because you may go to a preliminary hearing. You may hire somebody else. You may decide to go to the public defender's office and say, write it out and see how it goes. And right about 3 months, 3 or 4 months, you may say, you know what, I need a lawyer. And now our follow-up is 3 or 4 months, but those are our follow-up letters where we say, hey, we've met, here's more information about me. The newsletters, the brochures, all that keeps going out. It never stops. So even if you hire Jackson, next year you are still getting my newsletters. Okay, so bottom line is that there's no magic formula to any of this. It's like any other problem. It's continuous work toward it. Marketing isn't about spending money. Money is part of it, but it's not the only thing. Marketing is work. It's like working out. If you're not putting in the time, you won't see the results. And again, these strategies, you aren't going to see this in a week. So if you leave here today and you take these strategies and say, you know what, we're going to implement these, and you do it this week, you do it next week, and then next year you say, I'm taking a break. There is no break. There is constantly putting on information. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do it. You can hire writers. You can hire people. If you are going to hire a writer to write for you, in my opinion, be careful who you hire. If you're going to have your staff write it, be sure to proofread it. I believe that the best person to write about my legal issues in my practice is me, because I think I understand them the best. If I'm going to hire an intern or a law student to write my blogs, I want to make sure it's in my voice and it's not written in such a way that it's an academic piece, as opposed to just kind of being real and upfront with people. Because I think if you take something written by a student and you compare it to something that a person who's been practicing for 10 years has written, you'll see a big difference. The student's going to write more like an academic, which isn't bad necessarily if you're writing to the Supreme Court. But if you're trying to connect with Joe the accountant or Joe the plumber, you have to write. It isn't a question of being simplistic. It's a question of explaining things so that person is not bored. Because if my intern writes a 3,000-word piece, well, Joe's not going to read that. Joe wants to read 500 words. What's the bottom line? Yesterday, I wrote a blog on medical marijuana, and I think it was 450 words. And I laid out who's covered, what's not covered, what the law is, when it takes effect, and what you can do to learn more information about me. And it's in 450 words, and it's laid out. As opposed to, if I searched online, I could find literally, the state's website had pages and pages about the law. You can download the law and read 450 pages. If I gave people, now look, that's where the books come in. But even our books are written in such a way where you can open it up and go to sections and just read that one section. And the important thing is that my information's in there, like how to contact me. I want people to know that I'm there. And a lot of our books, we put in there questions. People give us questions. And people want simplistic answers. Because again, it's an on-demand society. People are probably going to read that book or download it when they're watching their kids, and they just want an answer quick. They don't want to read through pages and pages of legalese. Okay, and finally, this isn't a perfect science. So marketing, I guarantee it, you will spend marketing dollars and some of it will be a waste. You will lose money, guaranteed. it doesn't mean that it's an entire waste. It's a learning process. I know that I've spent literally tens of thousands of dollars on things that didn't work out. I spent money on ad campaigns and things, and radio broadcasts and things like that didn't work out. And you learn. Okay, so marketing isn't like engineering, much like our clients. They're paying us, and we get them a result. It may not be the perfect result, but it gets them most of what they want, so it's a success. Marketing is the same way. It's about putting the time in, seeing what works, and the fact that you lost money on an ad campaign or that you spent money, it doesn't mean stop. Okay, so I think that everybody has to have a strategy or an approach. Every firm is a little different, whether it's a large firm or a small firm. I realize, having worked for a large law firm, that a large law firm really isn't going to put a book out like that out. Okay, they're not going to do that. It's a different kind of client. Okay, that kind of client isn't the client that I service. Okay, but that large law firm can still put out something for its clients that they would find valuable, and you've all worked in the practice long enough to know what works for your clients, what they're going to appreciate. If I worked for a large law firm, I would not send a book out like that, okay? Because I know that the clients would say, hey, this is kind of like, yeah, no. But for a small firm, that works. For a larger firm, perhaps it's something more. Perhaps it's a seminar. Perhaps it's a seminar and some literature that they can use for their own people. And finally, I always say this: stop complaining about competition. It's just, it's out there. In fact, attorneys, look, when I do a seminar, I call my competition, say, hey, come out. I'm not trying to hide the ball. I think that we're all in business to serve our clients, make money. But as far as competition, it's always going to be there. So you can't complain about it. You just have to work. You put out your product. You show how your service is the service that people want to hire, and you go from there. You can always do more, okay? But I think that clients and prospective clients are always watching us. So again, social media, reputation management, all this is important. To me, my brand image of my firm means more to me than one or two fees a client's going to pay. And I've turned down clients who I thought were going to hurt me. Clients who walked in my office and said, here's $10,000, we want you. And I've turned them away because I said, this is going to go bad. These people are coming in here with this unrealistic expectation where I know I can't get them this result. And at the end of the day, this money, this $10,000, I'm going to accept it, I'm going to work, and at the end of the day, it could cost me $500,000 down the road. So we've all been in that position. I think that, again, it all goes back to educating people, getting the right clients in your law firm. And that's all I have today. Any questions?